Most men assume the problem is themselves, that they lack discipline, that they're unfocused, that they should be stronger than this. But quiet desperation rarely comes from weakness. It comes from pressure without boundaries. And in 2026, pressure is no longer occasional. It's ambient. You don't enter it, you live inside it. Unlimited access to information was supposed to make life easier. Instead, it dissolved the walls that protected your mind. For most of history, distraction had limits. Noise ended, the day ended, the town went quiet. Now the stream never stops. Not because life became more urgent, because urgency became profitable. Your attention is no longer private property. It is contested territory. And most of what is competing for it isn't even human. It is manufactured, optimized, and deployed at scale. So before we talk about discipline, or stoicism, or deliberate living, we need to talk about the environment you're actually inside. Because if the structure is predatory, personal willpower becomes an unreliable defense. Most men grew up believing their mind belonged to them. You chose what you looked at. You chose what you thought about. Now your thoughts arrive preloaded. Before you've made a decision, you've already absorbed someone else's fear, someone else's outrage, someone else's priorities, someone else's performance. And the cost is subtle, not dramatic collapse. Dull erosion. You feel occupied without knowing why, busy without progress, stimulated without clarity. This is how quiet desperation forms, not from catastrophe, from constant intrusion. Imagine your mind as a house. For most of history, that house had walls and a door. People knocked. You decided whether to let them in. Now, imagine living in a house where the door never closes, where strangers walk in at all hours, arguing, selling, performing, demanding attention. Some are entertaining. Some are disturbing. Some are simply loud. But none of them leave. Eventually, you stop feeling at home in your own space. You feel crowded inside yourself. This is not distraction, it is intrusion. And the modern world has normalized it. Henry David Thoreau warned that men live lives of quiet desperation. In his time, desperation came from conformity. Men lived according to the expectations of the town. Today, desperation comes from immersion. Men live inside a stream that never asks whether they want to be there. The problem is not that you lack direction. The problem is that direction requires silence, and silence is now rare. Carl Jung described the persona, the mask you wear to function in society. In a digital environment, the mask never comes off. You perform competence, confidence, stability, detachment. Over time, the gap grows between the performed self and the actual self. That gap produces pressure, irritability without cause, fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, a sense that something is off but you can't locate it. You know this feeling. You pick up your phone to check one thing, and 10 minutes later you can't remember what it was. Not because you forgot, because you were rerouted. Jung called this the shadow, not weakness. Unintegrated parts of yourself accumulating force. A man who is divided internally cannot be steady externally. And the internet rewards division. It rewards performance over integration. This is where Stoicism is often misunderstood. Stoicism is not suppression. It is containment. The Stoics believed there must be a place inside the mind that remains unreachable. They called it the inner citadel. Not a quote, a structure. A protected space where reaction is delayed long enough for judgment to reassert control. Attention is the gate to that space, and most men have left the gate open. Every notification walks in. Every outrage cycle sets up camp. Every algorithm decides what you will think about next. Over time, the gate weakens. You lose the ability to choose what occupies your mind. You become administratively manageable, reachable at all times, predictable, exhaustible. You felt this too. You close an app and immediately reopen it, as if your brain didn't get the message. That's not lack of discipline, that's conditioning. Focus is not productivity, it is leverage. A man who cannot be distracted becomes difficult to manipulate. Harder to provoke, harder to steer, harder to replace. In a competitive world, undistractability is an advantage that compounds, not because it makes you peaceful, because it makes you effective. This is why calm men are often underestimated. They are not disengaged, they are conserving force. You do not need to escape technology. You need rules for engaging with it. The Walden Protocol is not minimalism. It is attention rationing. Like ammunition, not used everywhere, deployed where it matters. Start small. Move your phone charger out of reach from the bed. Not as a lifestyle overhaul, as a structural change. If the device isn't within arm's reach, the day does not begin in reaction. 10 minutes of control restores authorship. Second, prune one source of algorithmic noise. Not everything. 1. If a feed consistently leaves you more agitated, fragmented, or distracted than when you entered, it is not neutral. It is extractive. Remove it for 7 days. Observe what returns when the intrusion stops. Clarity often arrives quietly. Third, return to physical reality daily, not as relaxation, as recalibration. Walk without headphones. Work without background stimulation. Sit in silence long enough for your own thoughts to surface. Thoreau went to the woods to confront the essential facts of life. You don't need the woods. You need essential time. And here's the part most men don't want to hear. If you don't protect your attention, someone else will decide what your life is about. Not maliciously, not personally, systematically. When the noise decreases, something surprising happens. You do not become less informed. You become more decisive, less reactive, more deliberate. Quiet desperation fades when you stop living on autopilot. You cannot control the modern world. You can control how permeable you are to it. The goal is not isolation. It is selective permeability. The ability to decide what enters and what stays outside. In an environment saturated with synthetic input, remaining deliberate becomes a biological advantage. You become difficult to standardize, difficult to predict, difficult to consume. A biological original in a synthetic system. You don't need a new life. You need a door that closes. This is the long game.